Hey there, chitheads, it's Leki here with a quick message before we get started with this week's episode. A couple of months ago, Tristan and I interviewed Sam Illingworth and Paul Wake at Manchester University. They were very kind to invite us there, and we talked to them about their Kickstarter campaign for the upcoming Carbon City Zero, a deck builder that they've created in collaboration with the charity 1010 Climate Action. We talk a lot about the Kickstarter campaign as though it's about to happen, but in reality, the Kickstarter campaign for Carbon City Zero is live and it's doing really well. Head over to Kickstarter and search Carbon City Zero to check the game out or to back it. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check it out.
Welcome to today's episode of Board Chitless. Today I'm joined by
Leki.
And we also have two very special guests who we're very excited to have with us. We have Dr. Sam Illingworth.
Hello.
And Dr. Paul Wake.
Hello.
From MMU, Manchester Metropolitan University, the faculty members of the MMU who are also big avid gamers like us. So we're very pleased to have you on the show. And now that I've given you the standard introduction, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself more in more detail, to tell us about who you are, what you do, and you know how special gaming is to you. Starting with Paul.
Right, well, hello. So my name's Paul Wake. I'm a reader in the English department, but for some reason they let me teach people games. So I teach my students games, and they write about games, and they also write games. The other side of what I do is as one of the co-directors with Sam of the Manchester Game Studies Network, and we do all kinds of different kinds of gaming activities, research. We make games. We have a lot of fun. So work's become really very entertaining.
So I'm a senior lecturer in science communication, and my research and work is around developing dialogue between scientists and non-scientists, and especially giving voice to audiences that might be traditionally underserved or underheard by science. And some of the work, or part of the work that I do, is with Paul, with the Manchester Game Studies Network, as well as conducting academic research into board games and also video games, but Paul and I are really interested in analog games the most. We also write a column for Tabletop Gaming magazine, and we write research articles. And then also Paul and I have recently started to design games as well. And I suppose the tagline that we like to think about is...
Go for it.
Going for it. Practice.
Hey, us, do the marketing.
We design games that start conversations. And that's nice. Really what we try and achieve with the games that we're designing at the moment.
Cool.
Excellent.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment, and you can tell us all about the game shortly that you and Paul are working on. What I wanted to make a note of quickly is how cool it is that you've turned your roles, in your professional academic roles, such a way that you are able to just game and do game design and talk about games and write about games as part of your professional lives.
It's like Trojan horsed board games into an everyday job. It's absolutely amazing. I think more people could learn a lot from you.
But it is very much the case of sometimes when Paul and I will be doing serious academic work, where one of our partners or a colleague will come in and going, "What are you doing?" And we're like, "Well, we're quite clearly discussing the role of colonialism in Catan. This is serious academic work that we're doing here." So yeah, it's. I mean, obviously Paul and I have several other aspects to our jobs as well, but we feel really privileged and fortunate to be able to work with a medium that both of us love doing so much. And yeah, it is a great opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And gaming and learning go hand in hand, I feel. Certainly part of my motivation for designing 1066 Tears to Many Mothers was to add that historical element into gaming. But you're sort of taking that to another level by helping your students to develop by learning how to write games and create games, Paul, you were talking about before, and
so
as part of their studies kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, my students look at games in two ways. So firstly, they look at games as a sort of cultural event or moment. So just like they might read a book or they might write about a film, they'd also write about games. And so for most of my students, that's video games, but the very dominant cultural form. So they find that really exciting. And then the second thing we'd like to do with them is to look at how they might write games and use games to make their own games. A lot of them want to work in the games industry, as you might expect. So we do a lot of sort of industry-facing stuff and try and get them working in that vein. So it's really exciting. It's a real treat. Some say it's a real treat to be able to do that. We're very lucky, I think, to be allowed to make work so much fun.
And I think something that Paul and I really try to do and that we're really keen on is helping other people in higher education use tabletop games as a medium through which they can teach their subjects. So over the past couple of years now, we've been working with colleagues in art, in history, in sociology, in psychology, in ecology, all the ologies basically, on how they can use ready-made board games as ways to, start conversations.
Yeah.
And something we're really passionate about is really don't like edu games, right? Like, these are games that are not designed by games designers. They're games that somebody's thought, let's make climate change bingo or something like this, right? Which isn't entirely...
This is your game, right?
And it's, or, let's do a reskin of Monopoly,
Right.
Physicsopoly. And these are games that nobody would choose to play of their own volition. Whereas what we think is really important is picking games that have been designed by games designers and that are fun and that people want to play because they're great games, and then thinking about what learning outcomes can come from those conversations that take place during those games. And like for us, that's an amazing way that games can be used, not just in higher education, but in pedagogy more generally as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like when you're at work and they go, right, today we're going to do some role play. And you're like, oh, cool. And you grab your dice and stuff. And like, no. You're an angry customer and I'm going to tell you how to deal with it. It's like, nobody wants to do that kind of role play. Nobody wants to play that kind of edu game.
It's like you get people volunteering to go to primary schools and it's like, we're going to play this financial awareness game.
Exactly.
It's like, the skin's crawling just thinking about it. But what do you discuss with your colleagues? Like, say a sociologist will come to you and say, right, we want to develop a board game to help learn these concepts. You go, right, cool. It sounds like a Euro. You're going to need these mechanics, or you're looking more of like a broad overview of like how you want people to interact with each other.
No, absolutely. So I guess instead of like designing games, it's using commercially off-the-shelf available games that already exist. So it would be working with colleagues who, for example, want to talk about a particular topic, and then working to see what games that we know from like our experience might be able to touch on that topic to enable those conversations to take place. So, for example, one of the issues in art, or with a lot of students, is imposter syndrome. So this idea that, I'm an artist. Am I an artist? Especially amongst our students, to what extent do I become a proper artist? Or what extent am I a fake artist? And these are really important questions that are quite difficult to tackle in a meaningful way in a higher educational environment. But the board game or tabletop game, A Fake Artist Goes to New York, I don't know if you've played this game, like, is an amazing way of starting to have those conversations. So, in it, one person is a fake artist, everybody else is an artist, and one person basically gives everybody, apart from the fake artist, something to draw. And the fake artist doesn't see what that is. And what happens is each of the artists need to add one line at a time to this item. Let's say it's a cat. And the fake artist needs to also add to that item without being caught out. And it's a really, really great way of then starting for people to feel about, am I an imposter? Am I real? Am I fake? Am I an artist? Am I not an artist? And when we've played that with our students or with academics that are interested in starting these conversations, it's just a natural and enjoyable and fun way of talking about something that's really, really important to those students, rather than using a game that's been designed to do something that feels very heavy-handed.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds like a really interesting concept. And from a research point of view, then, have you ever come across in a situation where it's like, I don't know if there's a game that covers this, we need to go away and
there's a board game for everything these days.
Yeah, I mean, theme-wise, that there is pretty much a board game for everything. And so, what was the racing car game we used?
Pitch car.
Yeah, so one of the things we had to try and do was to work with young people at a music festival who were about 7 or 8, and this was part of it was the Institute of Physics, wasn't it, who funded this, and they wanted to teach something physicsy that would engage this very young audience. So we took Pitch Car, and we talked to them about Newton's laws of motion, about friction, and played Pitch Car. So in that one, the mechanics of the game were all about physics. It's all about flicking and the sort of the gliding motion of the piece and stuff. Whereas the theme was completely didn't really fit at all, I suppose. Whereas Sam's example of Fake Artist, the theme was perfect, and the mechanics are also pretty good. So far we've not found one. We've not been able to find something.
That's so cool. And do the other department heads, they approach you, or is it something you're sort of pitching around and kind of like championing?
Are you throwing board games through the corridors?
Just trying to find ways to play games all day, every day.
My first experiment.
We are definitely getting to a point now where we're running out of space for the games that we have, like in the official Manchester Game Studies Network capacity. People are aware of the work that we're doing now, which is great. We got like an internal grant from the Centre for Excellence in Learning and Teaching to
Fantastic.
work with other academics
Lovely.
exactly for this reason, to help them to develop resources and think about what kind of games to use. And I think, as Paul was saying, thinking about theme and thinking about mechanics, from the times we've done this, it seems to be the ones where the mechanics convey the message or enable the dialogue to take place that are definitely the most powerful. Chemistry Flux is a really good example. So the game Flux from Lulu Labs has many, many different skins, of which one is chemistry, of which one is maths, of which one is physics. And in theory, that's a really great idea because you can be playing Flux and reading the cards and learning information. But what you tend to realise with Flux is you don't read the cards, do you? You just pattern match and you play the game. So actually, it's those games where the concept of the actual mechanics, Pitchcar's a great example, is something that's able to convey that idea or that theory much more powerfully than somebody sitting and reading reams of text on cards, which we know just doesn't happen.
And it's cool that you're sort of breaking down those barriers from when you were talking about the arts game before. It's taken away that sort of social awkwardness that comes from opening a discussion like that. Mm-hmm. With a board game, you're giving everybody the same set of rules and the same sort of structure to open the conversation or discussion or experience.
I mean, that's one of the things we found is really useful about games is that they create this space in which people can, talk to each other.
A magic circle.
Some might call it a magic circle. I wasn't going to say the magic circle, but we found it's really useful that people can. You can even be unpleasant and unkind and attack each other in a game, and in that context,
and you're
that's
justified.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
in
so
the best games,
you can take on roles that aren't your own, assume different positions, and it works. It works really well. So they've been good. Sorry
to interrupt. It kind of brings different types of people together as well, because you get people who are a bit more socially awkward opening up more because they're given a structure and a framework that's easy to understand, and it puts everybody in the same position as players in a game. You all occupy the same sort of role. In a social circle, if you're out at the pub or if you're in a group of friends or if you're in a university lecture or whatever, you have those different social dynamics that dictate, who's the alpha and who's the shy guy and who's, you all have those different sort of societal social roles. Whereas within a board game context or a tabletop game, you all are occupying the same sort of role naturally. And then your own personalities might come in and change that dynamic within the game. But at least you start out from the same sort of footing.
No, absolutely. And I think, in terms of, the wider context, exactly that. Think about like team building exercises, but actually playing like collaborative games with one another, like something like Dead of Winter, is a really, really great way of enabling students to just chat to each other and have fun. So one that we've used a lot, not for any particular pedagogical reason, but just as a way of getting students to meet and talk to each other, is Betrayal at House on the Hill, which is it's my favourite game anyway. It's my favourite tabletop
This will encourage collaboration. One of you is going to be a killer.
But it's great, and it's because it's one of those games that actually is really easy to pick up.
Yeah.
You need one person who kind of knows the rules a little bit, but then it's just exploring a house, and everybody can experience that. And it then becomes this really, really great way of enabling them to bond and to have this social interaction that they might not normally be able to have. And to an extent, the game becomes the tool that enables that interaction to take place.
Yeah, and that's a nice example because it's got such a sort of narrative experience to it. You're flipping a tile and you're moving, but you're actually developing a story together and collectively sharing an experience. And obviously, there's a huge surge of cooperative games at the moment, which totally changes the dynamic of gaming, because rather than like you were saying before, smashing against each other, you're working together towards a shared goal. And I wonder how that sits with, people who are new to gaming. We're all gamers here, so we know the difference between competitive and cooperative games. Yeah. But for people coming into gaming for the first time or having this experience through people like yourselves who are introducing them to gaming, having a cooperative gaming experience, I wonder how different that is, and what a different experience it gives to people in terms of...
There's a whole range of games now coming with both competitive and cooperative rule sets. And you can see the market really is clamouring for more. They want more co-op. And you get a lot of people on Board Game Geek and Facebook saying, I never play competitive games. We've got a friend who won't really play competitive games, because they don't like the aggression or the way that it's then set up as a social dynamic. They want to be building stuff and helping each other.
Yeah.
There's one game that I got from Backspindle Games, Ninja Squad. And David Brayshaw, the CEO there, he went away on a Sunday and wrote his own co-op rules for the game because a few people were coming up to him saying, it's a great game, but I'd love to play it in this fashion. So he's like, okay, we'll enable that. So it's interesting to see now what going further down the line, if we're going to just get more and more board games that are 1 player, 4 players,
Yeah.
competitive and co-op. They've got all these extra modules and expansions just to help more people have fun with it.
Yeah, solo play's huge as well, isn't it? That's
It's massive.
That's a whole
Yeah.
other discussion about like making games that you can play by yourself. And with cooperative games, I think a lot of people ask for that because they want to play against their 5-year-old or whatever, and they don't necessarily want to trounce them at War of the Ring. So they might want like a more, let's save the world together instead and play Flashpoint or something. But yeah, getting slightly digressing away from the point I was going to ask you about. So the game that you guys are working on, let's hear it. How is that competitive, cooperative? What's the story and what's the name? And tell us all about your game.
So the game that Paul and I are working on at the moment is called Carbon City Zero. Paul and I have worked on a few games before, but we were working with this amazing climate charity called 1010 Climate Action. And they were like, would you be able to design a board game around heat decarbonisation? To which Paul and I
Oh my God, I get asked that all the time.
If anything, it's too sexy at all. Right? So,
It's too hot to touch.
Exactly. But, so we were like, well, we'd really like to. It'd be interesting. And then, my background's in environmental science. And to be honest, even I was something I was completely unaware of. So we're looking at some of the statistics and they're pretty frightening. So the idea behind heat decarbonisation is if we want to be a country that is meaningfully reducing our carbon emissions by like whatever year, we need to tackle the housing market. And it's really, really important. And it's not just building new homes, it's retrofitting those old ones. And if we want to meet EU standards by 2050, we need to retrofit 20,000 homes a week between now and 2050.
Oh, wow.
To put that into context, we're currently doing 20,000 a year, which gives other reasons for why some people might be keen on Brexit happening sooner than expected. So, this is a really, really important thing. We consider ourselves to be quite educated people, but we'd never really heard of it. So it's like, right, this is something that obviously conversation needs to start taking place around.
Yeah.
And actually, for the reasons Paul was just saying, tabletop games are a great place for those conversations to take place, right? And like both at and away from the table. We started designing this game and we're thinking, right, we really want it to be like a deck builder because we both like deck builders. And deck builders in some ways are actually, even though it's a relatively new mechanic in board game circles with Dominion, it's actually quite a straightforward concept for people to grasp that haven't maybe come to board games before. In some ways, actually, bizarrely, deck builders are more difficult for people who have got experience of card games before rather than coming to it fresh.
Yeah, because it's kind of turning it on its head.
Yeah. Exactly, right. So we're like, right, we really want to work that. It needs to be like a two, and then we start thinking like, what are the constraints? So we want this to be a game that policymakers can play, that people in higher education can play, that researchers can play, that people that are needing to make these, like counsellors can play, that are going to make these decisions can play. So it needs to be something that takes under an hour. It needs to be something that takes 2 to 3 to 4 people. It needs to be something that's sustainable, so, cardboard, and it needs to be something that can take place without facilitation, so that it can just be played as a game. And of course, that people want to play because it's fun, not because it's trying to teach any kind of message. You are the mayor of a city of your choice, and the idea is that you're racing to become the first carbon zero city. So you start off on a points tracker, and then you start off with a pretty rubbish hand of like poor housing stock, limited budget, like remote properties, and then as you go, as you would with Dominion or Star Realms, you upgrade as you go, and you can have like eco houses and like net zero hubs and renewable incentives. And we were really keen that the language that we were using was correct and the mechanics that we were using were correct as well. So we actually designed this in collaboration during workshops with policymakers, with local councillors, with like climate change activists. And again, come back to this idea we're talking about, that we really wanted the message to be conveyed in the mechanics rather than the text. Mm-hmm. And so in the game, you've got like 3 different suites, as you will, or suits. So you've got like a housing, a local government, and a industry. And in order to win the game, you have to give thought to all 3 of them, and they have to work collaboratively together. So that's basically how the game works. We've been working with an amazing Mancunian artist called Tony Pickering, who's done all the graphics for us, which are really, really good. And then 1010, they've got a fantastic graphic designer there, professional graphic designer called Matt Bunner, and he's been doing the graphic design with us. So we got it to like a certain point on Nandec, and it was like, this is like not embarrassing to show people now, and then
it's the most you can hope for.
Exactly,
it's no longer embarrassing to show.
It's not embarrassing. It's completely illegal because all the photos are just from somewhere,
just borrowed.
Yeah, borrowed. And then it's now at this point where it looks great. It's been play tested by several hundred people now.
Fantastic.
It does its purpose in terms of it. It starts conversations. It takes about 30, 40 minutes to play. It plays best, we think, as a 3-player. Any profits that are made will then go back into buying extra card stock.
Yeah.
So those games can then be given to local communities and schools that we work with through the charity so that they can play it. So there's no profit to be made in this particular instance. And again, it was really important for us that we work with a sustainable producer. So we're working with Ivory Graphics, who have got really good Forestry Commission standards. They print in the UK, which again is not possible for everyone, especially when profit margins are tight. But for us, that's not an issue. It's more about having a sustainable game. So we're purposefully we're trying to avoid like plastic wrapping, but then letting people know your cards are probably
wonky.
Wonky by the time you get to it, but that's okay. So what we're really hoping for is that it's well picked up on Kickstarter, but then also that people start playing that game and having conversations about it and really start thinking to themselves, what does it mean to be a zero carbon city, and what can we as an individual and we as a local community do in order for that to take place? And introducing this concept by having a game and a friendly competitive game, which mirrors really what's happening in the real world. This idea of who's going to be the first carbon zero city. Is it going to be Newcastle? Is it going to be Manchester? Is it going to be...
Yeah.
But that's really good, friendly competition that we want to have in order to drive the game forward and drive the agenda forward as well.
I love that you've sort of every level tried to add as much authenticity as possible, not just in the actual context of the theme and the names on the cards, but even the way that the game is produced as well. It's fantastic.
You've got
a noble cause.
Yeah, you've got to practice what you teach to a certain extent, especially if you've got there's a lesson that you're trying to teach people. So then you can't have it all printed on plastic cards and shipped from...
That's an irony we want to avoid. Here's our box of plastic,
We're also making £10 each in every copy.
Yeah, and I think really trying to be like as transparent as possible with it throughout the whole process. And it's been great. I mean, it's been for us like really interesting doing like the workshops that led to the design, and we really went in with an open mind, being like we think a deck builder will be right for this, but you tell us how you think, what cards need to be included, and then playing it at each stage with these different groups. And obviously you'll know, being far more qualified games designers than us, that it's that tricky thing of wanting to accommodate most of the needs, but at the same time being like, you're probably wrong there as well. Yeah. And like everyone's got slightly different agendas with things as well.
Well, that's one of the fun things. So one of the things that came in the workshops is that we put names on the cards that we thought were right. They told us some weren't, and some we changed, some we didn't. But what we're hoping is when people play it, they might think, no, that's wrong, and then they have to work out why. So why an eco house? Why not this?
Yeah.
Why not hydrogen gas?
Absolutely.
So if we've got a kind of get out of jail free card, I think, in that we want people to talk about it. So if we've got it wrong to the point where they talk about it a lot, that's fantastic.
That's great. Yeah, like you said before, it also feeds into the fact that it's just opening up the discussion on that in the first place as well. It's not like a historically proven thing, because what you're talking about here is the future and how we're going to develop as cities and stuff. And also you can have the worldwide expansion and start moving those cities out to New York and Paris.
This is something we are currently exploring as well. I mean, so one of the things we're trying to do with the Kickstarter, with the pledge levels, is keep it fairly basic. So like you got your standard deck, but then one of the things we're doing, we are going to do this. We're going to commit it to audio. So
what is happening?
So you've got like basic,
doesn't require nudity.
Basic pledge level, but then also you can pledge quite a bit more to be a city that features in the game as one of the cards with an alternative rule. So then we're going to introduce a level of asymmetry where at the start of the game everyone gets dealt out a random card, which is like Bristol or Manchester or Rio de Janeiro. And if you're Rio de Janeiro, maybe you've got slightly more money to spend.
Variable player powers.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Nice.
But then that's something that the Green Commissioner at Rio de Janeiro can then pitch, because then Rio de Janeiro will be represented in every single card deck. So that's like quite an excited. Cool. But that was a great example of something that came out of the playtesting, in that someone suggested this as an idea, and we're like, this is a really cool idea that wouldn't necessarily work just in the base game, but as a like alternative rules variant, and then we can increase that and include that in the pledge manager or pledge level would be really, really cool.
And the other thing people wanted was not a competitive game. So quite a few people said, well, this shouldn't be a competitive thing, and we see it as a kind of happy, friendly, exciting competition. Who can be first? Inspiring each other.
But you're not screwing each other over.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite Euro in that sense. There isn't a lot of. Is there any way you can interfere with it? Not really.
You're building landfills.
You can be slightly unkind.
It's a bit like Dominion without the expansions. Like, so when you're playing it without like the witch and things like that. So you can be, exactly Paul says, you can be unkind without necessarily like completely.
You can't really be aggressive.
Yeah.
But one of the things we're planning to do, hopefully, again, we'll see if this comes out, is to find out about 6 or 7 different ways of playing the game that aren't the way we describe it in our rules. So we want to include with the game, look, here's a way you can play it so that you're actually trying to all reach 0 by a certain point. So I think
like collaborating basically.
Yeah, so I think as you were saying, I think we'll try and build in some different ways of playing it. So we've presented our way, but I think we quite like to think, well, how else might people play this game?
Yeah,
or what else might they do with it? And just think of some different.
And with deck building, it's such a great framework to be able to do that, because you could add something as simple as you can now buy cards for other people. So you buy a card and it goes into their discard pile instead of yours, and just slight tweaks like that will change the nature of the game, but keep the fundamental mechanics intact.
And I think as gamers ourselves, we're really, really, when we play games, obviously having house rules, but oftentimes changing the rules completely because it's something that we want to do with the game or we want to have fun with it. And I think it's encouraging people who are maybe outside of the gaming community to realise that rules are there as guidance.
Yeah.
It's like when you're playing D&D, like this, they state, this is guidance. You don't have to stick to them at all, right? They're a framework that can help. And that this is one variant, but exactly that. That's a really cool idea. We should make a note of that. It's one of the rules variant. It's like buying cards for people. It's really nice, but exactly that idea, and then allowing those conversations to take place with those rules variants as they come up as well.
Yeah, a lot of the time, having fun with games is the modding and the hacking. So when we play on a Thursday, a lot of the times we don't let Tristan take a turn, and it really increases our enjoyment of the game.
Absolutely, and this is that modability is one of the reasons why both video games fans as well, and there's a lot of work, a lot of research done into how video games can be used in education, in communication. But for us, I think one of the benefits that tabletop games have over video games is that they're just so easily moddable.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't need to have...
You don't have to break the code.
No, exactly. And have
core
really
system.
Specific skills as well to be able to do that. Really, you need a pen and a paper, and you can mod almost any tabletop game, which makes
sleeves.
them... Exactly, in card sleeve, which makes it a really, really inclusive way of encouraging everybody to be able to modify these games for an environment that suits them.
Yeah. From a sort of sociological point of view, when you were playtesting this game then, did you see that people that were attracted to the game for playtesting, were they mainly people that were already eco-conscious, or were you able to sort of introduce the game to people that were quite ignorant to maybe global warming or causes of it?
We had, because we actually playtested with several different groups. So we started off playtesting with our sort of closer friends to make sure that it wasn't completely awful, and then we kind of broadened that out. So we playtested it with climate change scientists. We playtested it with policy makers. So we've actually put it in lots of different places, and the feedback we've had each time has been sort of different. So gamers focus on, well, this is a bit like that, or this doesn't quite work. You put it in front of climate change activists and scientists, and I say, well, why are you saying this? That's not right. They can critique the phrasing on the cards in a way that maybe other people couldn't. So we've had to kind of add a kind of couple of extra levels of playtesting in to make sure that it spoke to different groups, really, which has been really, really fun, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, that's with any level of science communication or communication in general, reaching an audience that isn't already engaged in the issue is really hard, but absolutely what you should be aiming to do. But I guess one of the things we were thinking as well is that a powerful way sometimes of doing that is by reaching those people who themselves have a really powerful voice. So like policymakers, or like local councillors, or like community leaders, so that they can then take it back into their organisations, their communities, and say, look, this is something we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about it now.
Excellent. Cool. Are you prepared from a personal point of view to deal with the inevitable climate change deniers and the sort of trolls that are going to come out and say that this is like from an eco perspective, it doesn't make any sense because we're all fine, and the ones who deny like man-made climate change, because that's going to be an issue. It will come up because I'm not trying to worry. I'm just thinking of like games like CO2 that have created this discussion where people will come out like almost flat earther equivalents who deny it, and they're going to potentially bring that discussion
and I think a lot of my regular research is around how we engage people on the issue of climate change and other contentious issues. And I think for me, it's about actually not shouting down those people, but allowing for the fact that they have different needs and different experiences, and they've come to their realization or they've come to their opinion for whatever reason they have. And I think there's a large problem sometimes, and the board game community can be really black and white about things, and it's just like, if you're not on my opinion, then you're wrong. And it's like, it's all right for people to have different opinions. And you know, obviously, I think I know the climate catastrophe from a scientific point of view is anthropogenic. It's a huge, probably the biggest problem we face today. But if someone's a climate change denier, me shouting at them, telling them that they're idiots, isn't the way to go about changing their mind. Even me trying to change their mind isn't the way. It's about saying to them, okay, you've got your opinion. Let's have a discussion about it. I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to try and change your mind. I just want to listen to you. And then trying to understand those needs and experiences is really powerful. And board games enable that to take place, right? So it'd be really cool to be playing Carbon City Zero, which isn't, to be fair, massively about climate. It just makes a statement that it's an issue. But it'd be really cool to play that with some people who identify as either climate change deniers or climate change agnostics, and see what conversations arose. And I think that'd be a really powerful testament to how games can enable those conversations to take place without just, you know, shouting at each other, without listening what you might have to say.
Brilliant, fantastic. Sounds like you're thoroughly prepared.
Well, that's it.
The alternative is to just like make a list of swear words that you can use in the forums to throw them.
But like Sam's saying, really, you're creating a board game to transmit a message, and that doesn't in itself have to be a magic bullet. You've put the idea out there, and if people take it up or not, it's down to their personal opinion. But the fact that they're able to, you know, interact with it and then make a further decision is brilliant. It's better than doing nothing.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm just pointing out that it will be a discussion point that comes up.
We hope people are going to discuss it. So if we don't hear anything, that would be the worst.
To take it to a bit of a Sunday morning radio show sort of level, for this project, who would be your perfect backer then? Because it sounds more like, you know, it'll be great if, you know, Dave and Jenny on the street bought the game, but also, you know, if Vladimir Putin bought a copy, that seems like it would be a little bit better for you. So who do you envisage going out and backing the game?
It's a really good question. So I think for us, there's several different audiences. So first of all, there's the Kickstarter audience, and it looks visually really appealing, like really, really nice. So I think it will appeal to people who are gamers. It's quite a nice price entry point as well. I think it will also we want it to appeal to people who will use the game in a community or educational setting, or to start conversations. People who will buy the game because it's something that agrees with their beliefs, or, you know, their friends or their families or their children or whatever. But also, I think we're really interested in just people who find the topic something that's on their periphery, but they want to find out a little bit more about, and they want to start having those conversations. So what we're having in the rules book is a glossary of terms that talks about and provides further information. There's like a set of design notes for how people can find out even more about it. So then hopefully they'll be like, oh, this is a great game. Like, we're having these conversations. How can I find out more? Definitely reaching those audiences that are already engaged, but then also on the periphery of those people through their groups and through their groups, reaching out into the wider audiences to be able to start talking about this really important issue.
I think it's a great project to stick your teeth into, and it's from my point of view, from like games I've been exposed to as well, it's a lot different to what I've been seeing on the market.
Oh, God, the amount of themes that you've absorbed vicariously through a game that have no actual interest or like knock-on effects or value. We were talking about one before. I'm not going to name it now, but it gave me an education in a subject I had no interest in, and I feel like it's pushed out like old stuff in my brain that could have been more useful. Whereas this is a noble cause. It's going to teach people, educate them, and give them like I think a really valuable discussion. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a good one to watch.
Oh, definitely. Where can people find out more about the game?
So they'll be able to find out more about the game on the 1010 website. So it's 10:10. You can also look to the Manchester Game Studies Network, which is manchestergamestudies.org. That's manchestergamestudies.org. In the coming weeks, and we'll be putting up a few more blog posts about that via the Twitter feed as well.
Fantastic.
Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for talking to us, and good luck with it.
Cheers. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Future Leki here, once again, just to remind you that the Kickstarter campaign for Carbon City Zero is in fact live. There's a link in the description, so head over and check it out. Until next time, goodbye.